choice that only a mortal can make.
No. Yes, Cormyr. And much more.
Abaddon?
No. His power, his knowledge, but not him. His will is broken. There is a new god of secrets. There is a new day. Nightfall has come and gone. I have much to do. Much must be repaired. This will take you home, or to wherever you desire.
Cormyr, if you need help.
Yes, yes, I will. But for the moment, you have your world back. The gods spoke the truth. It is your world. Use it wisely.
Of course.
And remember, my friend, you never fight alone.
The most recent patch for Guild Wars 2, the start of Living World Season 3, had some pretty incredible stuff in it that really pushed the story in some places many of us have been excited about for a long time. And one of the big moments of that patch was the final revelation that one of the Elder Dragons, Primordus, is actually active, and we could be moving into a lot of storylines to do with him. However, today, guys, I want to talk about something else that this patch introduced, and at first glance, it seems like a very small thing, something not really to look at very much, but actually I think has some of the biggest implications for the future of this franchise, some of the biggest questions that are out there altogether. Today, I want to throw a highlight on that, and that is the Bloodstone madness.
Commander's destination ahead. Looks like we're in for quite a ride.
We're not flying into that scramble, are we?
By gods, grow a backbone. Scared of a little weather? On your feet. We survived. Somehow.
So, I'm going to start off today by talking a little bit about where the story has been before, so we're all on the same page and understand exactly where I'm coming from with what I'm about to say. So, let's talk about the Elder Dragons. Let's talk about exactly what we know about them, their most fundamental aspects. And really, they're not that complicated. These are big, mighty, powerful beasts that lay at rest on Tyria for eons and eons and eons until eventually they grow hungry for magic. At this point, they wake up one after the other, tend to be all around one another, and they seek to consume magic. They scour the planet, bringing destruction and death and misery to all those who are currently living on it. They destroy everything in their paths with their minions and they themselves, hungering for this magic which is built up on the planet until eventually they are sated and they fall asleep back into hibernation once again, where the people that remain generally forget that they existed in the first place. Magic is at an all-time low, and then slowly over time the magic seeps out of the Elder Dragons again, perhaps seeps from somewhere else also. The levels grow and grow and grow until finally one day the Elder Dragons awaken again. The Guild Wars 2 is currently set in the middle of one of these cycles. The Elder Dragons are awake. We have killed 2 of them already at this point, and as they have died, all that magic that these powerful creatures had contained within themselves exploded out across the planet, and many others are now vying for control of it, including the other 4 that we know of Elder Dragons remaining. So, now we're killing the Elder Dragons. We are responsible for the death of 2 of them, and there's a big question really that the story is asking us, and that is this a bad thing? right? Like, the Elder Dragons may be bringing much destruction to us, but aren't they necessary for the regulation of life and the existence of Tyria and perhaps the magical realms surrounding it? If we destroy these Elder Dragons, if there's nothing to consume this magic and keep it in check, won't the world topple into destruction? This is a question a lot of people have asked me many times, and it's a good thing that you guys are asking me that, because that is what the game is playing with. The game first supported the idea, I believe, in early obscure lines of dialogue in the personal story, but quite explicitly in Season 2 of The Living World, with the introduction of a patch where you get to explore the Dermond Priory secret archives. Here you find out about something called the All, or the Antikythera, which is a perspective of the universe that shows it as a cosmic mechanism that comprises Tyria and 6 bodies of power that are always in a push-pull of one another. In this story patch backing Living World Season 2, we learn of a character called the Apostate, a minion of one of the gods Abaddon, who suggests that if the Antikythera is to fall out of balance, say by, I don't know, killing an Elder Dragon, maybe, then the world will tilt and everything will fall away. So the game has been quite explicitly showing this to us. If you're wondering, by the way, how the Apostate, a minion of Abaddon, might know such a thing, don't forget that Abaddon was the god of secrets, and Abaddon himself may have been privy to these great secrets of the franchise. And then even very recently, if you want a less obscure example, Heart of Thorns itself touched on this idea that killing the Elder Dragons was a bad thing, and that's with Morgemoth himself, alright? As many bad things as can be said about the final boss encounter with that Elder Dragon, the dialogue certainly can't be one of them. Listen to what Morgemoth says here. He says to us when we first get into the battle that I am power itself. He says, I am life itself. He says, to deny me is to embrace oblivion. Later in the fight, he says, I am the only possible victor. Become part of me and endure, or fall forever again, he says, into oblivion. There's this idea of oblivion, and then the final ominous words coming from him as you defeat him. It's not, no, I've been killed. He's not thinking about himself. He simply asks, what have you done? So the suggestion here is that instead of killing the Elder Dragons, maybe we, the player characters, should be doing something else. We should be finding replacements for them. Replacements that can do this job, but are actually sympathetic to us and won't harm us so much. The main candidate for this, and this is really the main story of Guild Wars 2 right now, when you get down to it, the main candidate for this is Glint's egg. So Glint was a dragon who died in the novel 5 years before the start of the game. This was a telepathic entity that we met in Guild Wars 1, and because she was telepathic, because she could read our minds, it seems the suggestion is that this may have made her sympathetic to us puny mortals, and Glint wanted to protect us. So she, as it's revealed in Heart of Thorns, built a legacy, Glint's legacy, and this was a plan for us to survive, maybe even supersede this cycle of the Elder Dragons. A part of her legacy is an egg that she had laid. One of her, there's another egg out there somewhere, or another offspring of Glint somewhere at the very least, and presumably our plan here, Glint's plan, was to nurture this egg, to feed it magic, allow it to hatch, allow it to grow, and because her offspring will also be telepathic, then we can nurture it to become an Elder Dragon who will be nice to us. And that seems to be the idea. That's all very well and good, and maybe over Season 3 and Season 4 we'll see that come. But see, as this story develops, you're going to start asking yourself some questions. And they might not seem very important right now, but questions like, for example, why are we so sure that Glint's egg is going to be nice to us? What, just because she's telepathic? Because if you think about it, Morgemoth was the Elder Dragon of Mind, right? He was telepathic, and he certainly wasn't sympathetic to us. And then you might also be wondering, well, how can she be nice to us if our idea is to make her an Elder Dragon and have exactly the same job? Cut it which way you like, she still has to get rid of all the magic, and if that involves taking magic away from cultures and people who use a lot of it and rely on it, surely that's still going to cause devastation, no? How is she going to be so much better, this offspring? Or he, I guess. And more importantly, okay, is this other question. Why aren't the current Elder Dragons already more sympathetic to us? Again, wasn't Morgemoth telepathic? So it can't just be that these Elder Dragons have no comprehension that we have feelings too, no? So why aren't they? Now, these might seem like really small questions right now, and they're not at the forefront of the story, but as time goes on, I'm telling you guys, these are going to become a lot more important. And I believe that with this patch, the developers have recognized this, and they have started to answer those questions already. If you look between the lines, you'll see what they're doing here. Okay, so one of the main things that this patch has done as well, before we move on, is it's given us another candidate for a replacement of an Elder Dragon. There isn't just Glint's legacy and her egg, there is also Lazarus the Dire.
You are a heretic, Cordicus, and you shall lead no white mantle, for I am their god. The human seat of power and its current monarch are inconsequential. We are destined to face more virtuous pursuits.
Now, this is already a very interesting push-pull they've got going on here, because Glint actually wrote a self-fulfilling prophecy that brought about the downfall of the Massart. Glint seemed to not like the Massart whatsoever, and so Lazarus certainly won't like the idea of this egg being around at the same time, because if he knows at all that it was basically because of Glint, his entire race was destroyed. But nonetheless, it seems that Lazarus is another candidate. Now, why do I say this? He doesn't exactly look like an Elder Dragon, does he? At least the egg's going to become one. Well, I want to make a point to you guys here that the idea of an Elder Dragon is really more of a title rather than anything else, okay? One of the big things Heart of Thorns was already doing to us, though perhaps not showing it very well, was that Morgemoth really wasn't a dragon. We call him an Elder Dragon, but what was Morgemoth's physical body? It wasn't just the mouth of Morgemoth fight at the end, though there's a lot of focus on that, really, and if you look closely, the idea is that his entire body was the jungle. Morgemoth was this huge thing, all the vines, all the plant matter that comprised the entirety of the Maguma corruption at that time. That was Morgemoth. Morgemoth never had one single centralized single body, certainly not something that could breathe fire and have wings and was like a dragon in a classical sense. So from this perspective, that Elder Dragon is really just a title. It doesn't matter that Lazarus doesn't look like a dragon. He can still try to angle himself to be in that position. And indeed, that's what I think this patch is setting up. I think that what we're seeing here with Lazarus consuming all the magic of the Bloodstone. If you guys don't know exactly what happened in the most recent patch, there is a link on screen right now for you to check it out, where I do a sum up of everything. I think what we're seeing here is that he is trying to use the power of the Bloodstones, these great repositories of magic, to jumpstart his own ascension into Elder Dragonness, okay? Now, he could be doing this because he wants to be noble, and he wants to help, and he wants to protect us, much like we assume Glint wants her egg to do. And I absolutely suspect that as a very manipulative Massart, that's what he'll tell us he's doing. Or he could be doing this for his own reasons, selfish ambitions, his own lust for power, and his desire to avenge his fallen friends that were defeated on Tyria once long ago, which I suspect is the much more likely idea. So it seems that in the short term, this story is going to be about Lazarus going to each of the different Bloodstones around the world, in the Shiver Peaks, on the Fire Island chain, and so forth, and trying to gather as much of this magic as possible to whatever end he may have. I'd like to draw another parallel at this point as well when we talk about Lazarus consuming these massive explosions of magical energy to something else that we've seen in the franchise before. See, what we saw in this patch with Lazarus consuming all that magic is not the first example of this. A previous magical explosion that threatened to rip everything apart already happened. It didn't happen on Tyria, but it happened in the Mists. It happened in the Realm of Torment. It happened back in Guild Wars 1 in Nightfall when we defeated Abaddon. At the start of this video, you saw that happen in the cutscene. This was Cormyr's ascension to become a god. We saw a powerful creature, Abaddon, who contained a lot of magic within himself, being destroyed, explode, all of that magic within him being released and exploding very fast, and Cormyr charging in to absorb it all within herself and to take that upon herself, just as we saw Lazarus do here with the Bloodstone, though perhaps with lesser amounts of magic. Cormyr may have been doing something much more intense than Lazarus did. Remember what I just said a second ago about how Elder Dragon is really just a title? Well, that's pretty much true for the gods too, okay? Being a god isn't necessarily some special delineation. These, once again, are just powerful beings who hold a lot of magic within themselves, and the humans came to call them gods. If you look at the designs of all the different gods we have, or the human interpretation of what the gods are supposed to look like, they're clearly not all of the same race. Some of them look totally different. I believe Dwayna has wings. They seem to come from all kinds of different places through space or even time, perhaps. These are just powerful beings that have a lot of magic, and specifically the humans came to love these 6 because these not only were powerful beings, but they hit a couple of other criteria too. They were responsible for nurturing life on Tyria when they came to it, and particularly perhaps humanity. And also the other defining thing about the gods, I would say, is that they are mist walkers. These are travelers of the mist. They came from the mist to Tyria. They left to return to the mist at some point as well. And that is something that makes them a little bit different to elder dragons. So, looking at Lazarus, I think it's safe to say that we've seen this process he's doing happen before. It throws a very interesting question out there, by the way, as to whether Lazarus is becoming an elder dragon by consuming all of this magic, or a god by consuming all of this magic. And funnily enough, the scales tip a little bit more in favor of the god side, don't they?
For I am their god.
Because amazingly, think of this. Lazarus hits more than just the criteria of being a powerful creature. No, he didn't nurture and help the development of races on Tyria at any point. But if all the gods are mistwalkers, well, funnily enough, Lazarus is a Messart. And the Messarts are well known for being what? Mistwalkers. But that's all a little bit of a tangent. That's a bit of an aside and an interesting question that we'll go to. And I'll tie that back in just a second. Let's go back to some of the early things I was talking about in the video. And this small thing that this patch has done that I believe has very big ramifications for where the story might be going.
The people who were within the blast radius who, survived, they need to consume the magic to live, but the magic's also driving them more and more insane.
That must be why I've seen them snatching up Bloodstone shards.
In this patch, we see something happen that is very interesting to the White Mantle and to the members of the Pact who were already in the area of Bloodstone Fen before this magical explosion took place. Something happened to these characters that were in that area of the jungle right when the magical explosion hit. Something new was introduced to us, and it's this idea of Bloodstone madness. As you wander around this patch, and it's explained quite clearly a few times, that these characters went insane. As you travel down to the jungle floor, you will find there a bunch of your old friends and allies, members of the Pact, now only focused on one thing. They will fight you, they are hostile, and they are running around in Bloodstone Fen doing their own thing. They're not just aimlessly insane though, they do have a focus, and that focus is that they want magic. Being this exposed to that much magic that quickly has changed them in their minds. It's pointed out in more than one occasion that they're searching for magic, that they've lost themselves, and it's almost like they've become elder dragon minions, which do the exact same thing. So here in this patch, we have a story of being exposed to too much magic is making you go insane and want more and more and more of it. And so you might see where I'm going with this. This actually answers a fundamental question that I asked at the start of this video and for this franchise. It answers that question of why the Elder Dragons are all mindless, mad assholes, okay? Guild Wars 2, I think, is taking on something of a new theme here. A very cool idea. They're saying, what happens when you take that very well-known trope of power corrupts and making it a literal thing in this universe? The idea is this, that in some untold mythic time in history, there were these great beasts, powerful creatures, intelligent creatures perhaps, and the strongest and the smartest of them gathered magic from Tyria, and being so large and so powerful, they could actually contain it within themselves. But as they got this magic, it began to corrupt them. It made them crazy, it bound them to it, and now they hunger for more. This is why they don't care about us anymore. This is why we couldn't communicate with Zaitan. This is why all he and his minions cared about was magic, because literally, power corrupts. Magic will corrupt you. You want more and more and more of it. You will become greedy. Remember earlier where I mentioned that the word Elder Dragon was really more of an honorary title? It didn't actually mean anything. It doesn't mean every single one of these Elder Dragons has to be a winged creature that breathes fire. Well, you might have a bit of a question about that, and that's, why dragons? Why did ArenaNet decide to call these dragons? Is it just because dragons are cool? And certainly at the time when they were developing Guild Wars 2, lots of different gaming companies were making dragons their antagonists. Well, actually, I think it's a little bit more than that. And it's very cool what the devs are doing now, because there is another defining factor of dragons, another trope about them. And it's something that often goes a little under the radar in recent history, but it's greed. Remember that whole story from Tolkien about his dragons and dragon madness, their desperate thirst for gold? If you watched the Hobbit movies recently or read The Hobbit, or have ever really been into a lot of what Tolkien did, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, that's what I think they're doing here. It's that element of being a dragon that ArenaNet are running the ball with. That's why these are elder dragons. It's a very cool interpretation and play on dragonness that I think most people end up forgetting about. Anyway, maybe that's looking a little bit too closely. But that's the idea here. These people in Bloodstone Fen aren't crazy because it was a Bloodstone and something to do with what the White Mantle were doing in Bloodstone specifically. They're crazy because of raw magic. This is magic madness. And that is what I think the devs are eventually going to set up. I think this idea of madness is going to be a bigger thing upcoming in future patches until eventually what I've just said to you in this video is explicitly stated somewhere along the lines. And so what does this mean then? That might not even seem too exciting to you. You might think, so what? That's a fairly small part of the puzzle we just got there. Okay, we've got an answer as to why the Elder Dragons are dicks. But I do think it's an important piece of the puzzle, and it lays the ground for some even better stuff, okay? This reveals to us, if this is true, that once upon a time, Jormag and Kralkatorrik and Zaitan, who's now deceased, of course, and the Deep Sea Dragon and so forth, these were all, at least once, maybe, real characters with nuance and fun properties, and maybe even that still lies dormant in there somehow. It reveals that maybe what the Forgotten learned how to do with Glint when they cleansed her of her corruption may even still have value when it comes to the Elder Dragons themselves. It reveals that maybe the whole story isn't about finding 6 replacements for the Elder Dragons. We've got 1 egg so far and we need 6 damn replacements. But maybe there is another way of fighting the Elder Dragons. Maybe we just have to cleanse them of this madness. There is opportunity here to go into the origin stories of these dragons where they're real characters. There's more precedent too for any theory that's ever suggested that maybe the Deep Sea Dragon might be a good guy, or one of these dragons isn't totally one-dimensional, and that there could be a bit more going on. It puts more focus as well on the question of Lazarus. Questions like, okay, whether he wants to do this for his own selfish ambition or to help us or not, can he handle the magic? Will he too be corrupted? I think one of the most exciting places this story can go is that he says he's helping us. We are all openly not trusting him, believing he's deceiving us the entire time, and eventually it's revealed, no, he really was trying to help us, but the corruption gets him anyway, or whatever crazy idea you might like to concoct. And lastly, we have the gods. See, this is the most exciting part of this to me. The gods for Guild Wars, they were always the coolest part of the story back in the first game. They were the badasses, they were the enigmas, the mysteries, and the things you always wanted to see content be made around. But since Guild Wars 2 and the fact we've got multiple races and so forth, they've really been pushed more to the sidelines. They're a little bit less interesting, and there is this mystery about them, but it's always been about the Elder Dragons. But what this would mean is something quite radical that would push the gods once again to this really interesting forward place, because think of this, despite being so powerful, despite having all this magic contained within them, inexplicably, the gods aren't Bloodstone corrupted or magic corrupted. The gods don't have any of these features. The gods are examples of entities that did take all that magic within themselves and didn't go mad. How did they do it? If you need any more example, while the Elder Dragons have sought only to consume magic constantly and have been driven to this madness, the gods, on the other hand, did the exact opposite. The gods sealed the magic away. They used the Bloodstone, they hid the magic away, and they tried to separate it about the world. The only god to compete with them on that was Abaddon. Does that suggest that Abaddon was Bloodstone corrupted? Is that why the Marganites look so much like, say, Kralkatorrik's dragon minions? And what does this say for the Elder Gods too? People like Arachnia and these other suggestions from the Realm of Torment? Who knows? But I think that is a big, important thing. On the face of it, all this patch did was add some people who've gone crazy because of magic, but I think that is the devs setting the groundwork for some of the bigger questions eventually this story has to answer. Whether this will all come true, who knows? But that's why I've called it a Guild Wars 2 mystery. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Would love to hear what you think. This has been a fantastic patch. I told you that was a bit more interesting than just the fact Prime Ordis is active, and there's still plenty more to say, so I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Today, that one's supposed to be a pretty special one, as you're probably aware. That's going to be Living World Season 3, so as long as all goes well and there aren't any delays or anything, it should be really soon that we can all get there in there and finally continue the story.
So this is a huge patch. I've just come off of a pretty big weekend of a lot of recording. And as a result, I have a lot of videos for this patch. So I can't talk about any of it just yet because I'm under NDA until the patch goes up. But in preparation,